QuickBooks Pro Plus Desktop 2022. Download and open QuickBooks sample file. Get ready because we bookkeeping pros are moving up the hilltop with QuickBooks Pro Desktop 2022. Here we are on the desktop. In prior presentations, we got the software up and running, indicated by the shortcut icon to the software here. If you don't have the software for QuickBooks on the computer, take a look at prior presentations. Our objective this time is to get a data file up and running. Note that in a future presentations, in essence, the second half of the course, we'll be creating a new data file, entering data from scratch and entering 2 months of data from that starting point. However, in the first half of the course, we want to work with a data file that already has data in it so we can practice the navigation process. We will be using the data files that are provided by Intuit. These are the sample files because those will be the same files for everybody. Everybody has access to them, and they're going to have that data for us already. We also get to practice with a different set of data as we work with it, as compared to the new data file that we will be creating in the second half of the course. So we can find that by opening QuickBooks, which we will do, but note that you want to keep in mind what will be the result when we open this data file. We want to see that we will have access to it when we open the QuickBooks software, but we're also going to have the data file housed in some other location, and we will likely have backup files as well, which are basically a zipped up file which you cannot open within QuickBooks, but are smaller kind of files and good for the storage and backing up of the files. So to do that, let's think about where we're going to store those files. I'm going to open up this folder here. We set up this folder last time, QuickBooks Desktop 2022. I would like to put my files in here as well, including the data file and the backup files as needed. Note, you don't typically want the data file on your desktop because when you download the data file, it will often be downloading other kind of things, other small files along with it. So it will really clutter your desktop. You want to have a designated area where you're putting the data file, knowing where that designated area is. So I'm going to put my data file in here. I'm going to double click on this folder. I'm going to create another folder. Let's select the view icon up top. I want to make it extra large so everyone can see it. Last time we looked at our installation information. Now I want to make another one, which is just going to be data files. I'm going to have a folder, and I'm just going to call it data files, and then I'm going to make another folder, which is going to be basically our backup files. So I'll put another folder, new folder, and these are going to be the backup files. So there's going to be our two files, and you might even want to put QuickBooks data files. Let's actually do that. I'll say QuickBooks or QB. Let's say QB data files and QB backup files so that we distinguish them from other data files and backup files. So that's going to be the first thing. Then when we start to create reports, we'll actually think about how we could store those reports as well. So let's go ahead and open up our program now, double clicking the QuickBooks icon. This is the most common way to open the program. Once we have the data files set up, you can double click on the data files in a similar fashion as you might do with a Microsoft Word or Office. Notice we got the intro screen. What does creating a company file require? For creating a company file, you need to have an Intuit account, which would provide you better control of your data support and so on. Who are you creating the company file for? You can go through the process of creating a new company file this way. I don't like to do it this way. I will typically close out this screen, and then that'll take you to the intro screen here. Or if you had been working with a company file in the past, it will typically take you to the prior company file. So as you start working with the software, note if you work in one company file all the time, you will get in the custom of simply double clicking on the icon, which is the software icon, which will then open the data file automatically. And that could lead you to kind of forget where the data files are and the backup files are. You want to keep that in mind. If you do open up the file and it takes you to a company file, then you can go to the File tab here and you can close the company file. That will then take you to this screen. This screen currently has nothing in it for the prior company files because we haven't had anything open yet for this company file or this QuickBooks software. If you had prior files open, they would be indicated here. If you hover over them, they'll actually show you where those company files are on your desktop. We'll work with that as we go. So now you have your options down below. On this screen, create a new company. We can open or restore existing or open a sample file. We're looking at the sample file at this point. Also note, you have similar options typically up top with the file tab up top. You can have a new company file, open or restore. I will usually go to the file dropdown because it will always be there whether you're on this screen or not. You can also look to find a company file. If you don't know where your company file is, you could search it out here. But remember, if your company file is in this open icon screen, you can also hover over it and try to look for where it is actually located on your desktop because it'll give you the mapping of it. We'll talk more about that shortly. So what we're going to do is say I want to open a sample file. I'm going to hit the drop down on the right-hand side. They have two basic sample files, the sample product-based file and the sample service-based file. We want to look at the product-based file. That'll give us an idea of inventory. If you're not dealing with inventory, then your QuickBooks software will be a little bit easier, at least in that regard, because you don't have to use the tracking of the inventory. We're going to add the inventory. We're going to use a little bit more complex of a scenario so that we cover more bases as we go through the general information. And then you can peel off the items that are not applicable to you, such as, for example, inventory, if it's not applicable to you. So it'll take a few moments to download the sample file. Do you want to continue? I'm going to say, yes, I do. And so there we go. It's telling us where do we want the sample file. I'm going to put this then, I'm going to go to my desktop over here. And notice it's kind of choosing where I want it to go. I'm going to adjust this, go into the desktop and see, and then I'm going to go into my QuickBooks 2022, QuickBooks 2022, and you can see down here that this is actually going to go right to a data file. So it's going to have a QBW file as opposed to a QBB file, which would be a backup file. So I'm not going to put this in the backup files here. I'm just going to put it right into the data file. Again, you don't really want this data file typically on your computer because it won't just always be one icon like a Word document with one icon. It might have other kind of things that will really clutter where you put it. So put it in a place where it's got its own folder so it doesn't make this clutter, such as on your desktop or in some other folder that you're using a lot. It has the sample product base file as the name. I'll keep that. So I'm going to say save that. Now, it may take some time to restore given the fact that it is a fairly large data file. It's not a backup file. And then you're going to get this pop-up. You're opening a QuickBooks desktop sample. Important. Use the sample file to protect while you learn, to practice while you learn QuickBooks desktop. Don't use it as your company file. So it's telling you, hey, this is a sample file. Where you're using this file, QuickBooks desktop will set today's date, and it's currently date to 12/15/23. So it's going to be using the today's date of the 12/15/23, and it uses kind of a future date, and that's so that they can basically use the same sample file, into the future. So we're going to say, okay. Just note again, why would they do that? Because when you enter data into QuickBooks, it tries to read what the current date is to help you with the data input. So, and we'll see this kind of problem when you're working with a sample file. And if it's not today's date, then it's going to enter data, that's in the past or something like that by default. So the date and timing issues become some kind of an issue. So they're going to try to set that future date so they can use the same sample file as we go. So we'll open this one up. And there we have it. It says, at Intuit, we work continuously to improve our software and provide you with best possible product, service, and experience. One way we do this is by tracking QuickBooks desktop usage. QuickBooks is a web-enabled product. When you're connected to the internet from within QuickBooks, in addition to delivering product update messages, service information, and help content, we also collect data about you and your use for your software. This helps us see where our software is effective and what Intuit services help you manage your business most effectively. So they're basically saying, yeah, we're spying on you and what you're doing, but we're doing it for the greater good of fixing our software. So in any case, that they're collecting data for their own purposes and so on to improve the software and so on. So this is going to be the data file that has then been opened. So this will be the one we'll start off with and practice using here. And so in order to get a good idea of this now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to close this data file and then see what happened in terms of the storage. Where is this data file? So I'm going to close this up, close up the whole program, and then try to open it again. And we can open it again basically in two different formats. We still have the QuickBooks program over here, but we also have the data file. So we didn't put anything in the backup file. We got the data file folder. This is where it is stored. If I go to view, large icon, extra large, you can see this is the actual data file. It looks a little bit different than the software file, but they also put there was nothing in this folder before, and you got this junk in here now that if you were to delete it, I think it doesn't even impact the data file. It's okay, the data file still works, but it clutters things up. So if you put a lot of these data files on your desktop or in another folder, it will cloud the desktop or folder. When you open the company file now, you can either double click on the software, which would be similar to double clicking on a Microsoft Office software like Microsoft Word, Microsoft Excel, and then open the data file. But it will open the data file in essence automatically, usually, although it might not as easily this time because this is a practice file. Or you could do what you would normally do with like a Microsoft Word, Microsoft Excel, double click on the data file. For most companies, they simply double click on the software. It will open the prior data file that they were using, and that will be fine. But remember, if you do bounce back and forth between multiple files, you got to make sure that you're using the proper file. If you only use one file, not a problem. It'll always go to that one file. But if you use multiple files, then make sure you're using, the one that you want. So you could double click on either one of these. If I double click, say on this one, it'll open up then the program and then the file, the database file within it. Now, because it's a sample file, I believe it's still opened up to this screen, so that I still have to open this up to say that I want to open the sample file. So I'm going to double click on the sample file. Also note, now that you hover over it, you can see it gives you that mapping of where the file is. So if you just basically started the file and you put it somewhere you don't know where it is, you just use the default setting, it can be quite useful then to say, okay, well, where is that data file on my computer? And that'll give you the mapping to it. So it's under the C drive, users, owner, and so on. So I'm going to double click on this one. It gives us the same note that says, hey, you're using a sample file. I'm going to say, okay, that note will not come up later when we use the actual file instead of the sample file. Meaning when we start a new company file from the scratch or from start, in the second half of the course, we won't get that pop-up. It'll basically open straight there. And then it usually opens up to the home page, as you can see here, and we'll continue discussing about the home page and so on using this company file in future presentations.